This page ranks #1 on Google for social listening tools. It's a keyword where advertisers are paying $11 for a single click. Last year, we actually published hundreds of SEO pages that got 0 top 10 rankings. We used the same domain and the same AI tools. And what's changed wasn't better prompts now, it was that we started giving better input data to the AI. So I'm going to rebuild that #1 page with you step by step with the exact pipeline we run, which is with Claude Code, an SEO API, and your own social data. And you can then go ahead and copy the whole flow for your pages. When we audited our failed pages, we came to a conclusion that it was actually a mix of a few things that we did wrong. So the first, they were short, at around 800 words. Number two, they were also too salesy. It was too much our tool for everything kind of page. Thirdly, the pages were too generic and they contained nothing new that you couldn't generate with your own prompts and AI in 30 seconds. There was nothing unique. And Google is not stupid. My read is that if your page can be reconstructed from a large language model's training data, you haven't given Google a reason to rank that page. And Google has its own guidance, which says similar things in maybe a bit politer words. When we checked what actually ranks for the keyword social listening tools, or as a matter of fact, for any commercial keyword, what ranks is roundups. Roundups mean 7 to 12 available tools in the industry with comparison tables, real current pricing, and honest pros and cons. So in other words, it's actually thousands of words, usually in these articles, that require actual research. And our page, which we got to rank #1 now, is exactly this roundup format. So diving into how we did it and the tool stack that we used. The tool stack actually has only 3 pieces. The first is Claude Code, and we run it in our website's repo. Claude Code does the research, it writes the code, and it ships the finished page as a pull request. The second piece in our stack is a SEO for data API. So we use Ahrefs and data for SEO for search volumes, keyword difficulty, and live SERPs. The important part here is that Claude calls the API directly, so every decision is based on numbers and data instead of just your own input or vibes. The third piece is social data from Octolens. And full disclosure, it's the company that I built, so you can judge my input accordingly. But what Octolens does is get real user data and what people are saying on platforms like Reddit, Hacker News, and X. And you can get links back to those original posts. And that's what I would say our unfair advantage was. And we don't see other companies using this kind of data on their SEO pages. And a quick side note before continuing, this whole process that I'm about to share is written down as an open source scale file. So I'll show you at the end, and the link is in the description of this video for you to check out. Getting back to the process. So step 1 is the keyword research part. I give Claude one sentence at the beginning, build me a best social listening tools page. And the first thing Claude will do before writing a single line is getting the data it needs. It builds the keyword set around the topic. So these are things like social listening tools, best social listening tools, social media listening tools, social listening software, and social listening tools for free. All these different variables. And it calls the SEO API that I mentioned to get the actual search volume, the CPC, and the keyword difficulty for all of these terms. And what comes back is what really will shape the page. Social listening tools is the head term, but around this head term, there's a whole cluster of variants. So things like social media listening tools, social listening platforms, and social monitoring tools, all these different ways and related keywords. And one great page can actually win for the entire cluster at once. And ours ranks for #1 on most of these different variants. Claude also pulls the live SERP for the primary keyword. That means that the top 20 results are shown, and it reads them the way an editor would have read them. Claude asks what format is ranking, how many tools the top results list, whether there's an AI overview, and it also checks the what people also ask questions are. From that information, we know, or Claude knows, how long our own list should be in the end. We also know we need a clean, citable definition block near the top. And the people also ask questions is actually what's going to be the input for our FAQ section at the end with a schema. So the output of this whole step is a research file. This file has numbers, the SERP notes, and it has a decision for everything, like the target keyword, the format of the page, and the list length. The page is now completely designed with evidence rather than just what you think. And everything costs you maybe a couple of dollars in API calls, so very worth it. Next is the social data step that I mentioned. So the numbers alone are not going to help make your page rank #1. Anyone with an SEO tool has the same numbers and will be doing the same step. What actually helps is this one. And I actually haven't seen anyone else, at least not in our field, do this. And it's helped our page stand out. So for our best tools page, the gold is really what real users say about tools, and every tool on that list for that matter. So when people are asking, what do you use for social listening on Reddit, which happens all the time, they do things like praise tools, they complain about tools, they share their actual experiences, maybe even with an invoice or pricing. So that's primary source content, and it's sitting out there for you to use to add into your tools roundup for these pros and cons. Claude can query the Octolens search API, and what it does is essentially do a real-time keyword search from the last days to find conversations around your keywords without you having to switch any tabs or do any research on your own. It'll run a few searches, in this case, things like social listening tools and keyword monitoring. Plus, it'll also check out each major tool's name, so the tools that we're listing in the comparison set. It'll get the mentions from platforms where people are speaking freely or asking those questions that I mentioned before. And this is places like Reddit, Hacker News, and X. Back from this API endpoint come the mentions. For example, a user might be complaining that a big enterprise tool buries them in irrelevant alerts and that they couldn't see the pricing page without getting on a sales call with that company. That's great material for a con. So Claude can shortlist 6 to 10 quotes for each tool and also get the URLs of these quotes from the sites like Reddit. And there are 3 rules that we never break using the social data. One is that every quote is verbatim and comes from a public post. So we don't fabricate and we're not going to make up any quotes because that's going to hurt us long term. And number 2, every quote links back to its source. So we have that actual original piece of content. And these quotes then do 2 jobs for us on the page. First, the obvious, like I mentioned, they give us the pros and cons, which is great. So we don't just have like a generic AI generated pro and cons list that reads, with no depth or meaning. We have genuine pros and cons from actual people. And secondly, which is even maybe more important, is that it gives us the way people actually talk about the tools and how they would actually search for those kind of tools on Google. So now we have the language and the pros and cons. Okay, so the next step after the social data is actually writing the page. And now that Claude has all this information, Claude can start to write. If we look at the structure a little bit in detail, we can see the intro gives a straight answer immediately. What social listening tools are and which one you should pick for which situation. So there's no black and white for everyone, obviously. So this top block is what we can call the citable block for Google's AI overview and ChatGPT style search engines. So which I think are starting to matter as much as any of the other search results. The roundup itself is honest. It's real tools, not just ours. It's real pros and cons. And yes, Octolens is on the list because it's our page, but it comes with genuine information and disclosures. So we will definitely say that we build one of these tools, so judge accordingly, like I did in the beginning of this video. Every other tool also gets its pricing, which is fresh and current. So we verify that against their pricing page on the day that we write it, because stale pieces of information, including the pricing, is also a defect, which will not help your page to rank. Each tool will also get a best for section, which is grounded in the quotes that we got on step 2. There's also a decision framework. So for X, you should choose Y. And in the end, Octolens, my company, is not going to be the best situation or the best tool for any situation. So we will honestly say or give recommendations to a specific user that might be not our tool. For example, if you're an enterprise team and you really need dedicated insights for a department, we might point you somewhere else that has more of an enterprise solution. And in the end, honest pages are what rank. They get cited by AI search the most, and the readers will trust the recommendations. So even though it might seem counterintuitive to recommend other tools, in this case, it'll turn out for the best long term. After this genuine pros and cons part comes the FAQ section. And this is, I already mentioned, we had polled the actual people also ask questions from step 1. And this is the FAQ wrapped in a schema. And Claude also handles everything else you would normally forget in a lot of pages, which includes things like the sitemap entry, the internal links from related pages on your site, the meta tags, and even generating the images now works very well using Claude. Lastly, before anything ships, Claude runs a checklist, and the last rule on it exists because of a pretty expensive mistake. It confirms that the build passes and that every quote URL opens a real post, that all prices are consistent, that the schema matches the rendered page, and that there are no copy and paste artifacts from other pages on the site. All of these things will hurt your ranking. So this is a very important step. And actually now comes the last step. So after Claude has done all that, we do not auto-publish. It's very tempting to just go ahead and publish everything automatically. But what we do is that everything lands as a pull request and a human, usually me, reviews that content. And for us, that rule is non-negotiable because, as I mentioned, we've done hundreds of pages before with 0 results, and we had to delete those in the end because a human in the loop usually does the last kind of mile to make it perfect. So for a recap, here's the flow. Step 1, pull real search data and let the SERP dictate the format of the post. Step 2, mine the social data for verbatim and linked with quotes that nobody else can copy from you. Step 3, you write an honest roundup where every claim is verified. And step 4, QA everything and ship as a draft for a human to review because AI still does make mistakes. All that data will help already have a near perfect draft, but you really do want that final step. The result is on our own site. So we're ranking #1 for social listening tools and about 10 related keywords and 2,500 organic visits a month all come from that one page. And because everything that I just discussed lives in the skill file, we can do the same process for the next page, step by step, and have a similar result. The scale is open source and the link is in the description. You can get SEO data from Ahrefs or data for SEO today. We have no affiliation there. And for the social mentions, the quotes, and the real user language, that really helps your page have unique content and stand out. With X, Reddit, and Hacker News data, you can use our API, which makes one call. And that's what we're building at Octoland. And we're calling it the data layer for what people talk about online. If you build a page with the pipeline that I just showed you, please tell me how it ranks. I really want to know how it's working for you and what the results are.